All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are taking us in, whenever you're taking us in. Great to have you. Great to be taken in. It is, Kim's on board today.
Kim, how are you?
Morning. Kim, how are you?
Kim, how are you?
Yeah, and Tony is here today, by the way, and it is somewhat unexpected.
Thanks, Tony.
I thought it was going to be Albert today, and then Tony was here.
Thanks, Tony.
I love that Tony's here, but I just...
Well, Tony, what angered you?
I don't know what angered him, but I know that he's here now. So
Thanks, Tony.
We've got all our... I mean, why should I know who's on the show? I'm only trying to...
Yeah, come on.
I had a bunch of stuff that I sent to Albert. Now I sent it to Tony because I want to make sure that we get to everything. We've got a great show today. David Cay Johnston joins us in the second hour, and the word from Major Trump attorney is that there are likely charges coming and jail time coming for Donald Trump. We're going to put that off to the side. I know. But it's from one of his attorneys. So when he says prison, when he, there's a quality of ding dong, the witch is dead when it comes to Trump and Trump-related issues, particularly Trump and the law, as you're aware. And I think it's particularly noteworthy that ding dong, the witch is dead chant, in whatever form it takes, kind of gets louder as Trump seems to be an escape artist when it comes to all the legal entanglements and the likely illegalities that he's involved in, right? So you just see him doing all this stuff that's either illegal, unethical, or both, and you go, how can this guy get away with this stuff? And so when there is indication that he actually may go down, I think the chant, as I say, gets loud, and this is the one. He's going down here, right? And then something happens. There's a delay. Wow, the investigation, it goes on. I mean, the latest Jack Smith stuff is related to foreign investments and relationships that Donald Trump and the Trump Inc. people may have had during his administration that might be related to a lot of the documents that were sequestered and hidden by Donald Trump. So you see that, wow, that's like a big, juicy thing and investigation. Yeah, but how quickly is that investigation actually going to go down? And so as I'm saying all of these things and just mentioning all these things and reminding you of these things, I also am expressing what I think is a frustration on the part of many, which is that this guy seems to get away with so much and doesn't really ever have to pay a price. And so when you hear his attorney say, hey, we think the legal boom is lowering, and we think that real prison time could be associated with this, it not only makes headlines, but I think it makes those who have waited for a day of reckoning, it makes them feel better. And
Sorry if I got a little too joyful there.
No, and I'm just saying it may be premature. Yeah. I want to talk to David Cay Johnston about just that. Is it premature? What might happen? How is this the Houdini of legal entanglements going to get out of this one? He is truly someone who escapes from, it seems, every entanglement possible. That's in the 11 o'clock hour. Bottom of this hour, I believe we're going to get into something of a conversation about Alzheimer's medications and insurance for Alzheimer's medications. I was actually contacted by a viewer and a listener who was saying, we're going to have a big protest in San Francisco. If you could let your listeners in San Francisco know about it. It is regarding the use of this Alzheimer's drug and the fact that insurance companies are not covering it. And there's more to the story than that, but I'll let her kind of lay it all out. And I said, well, why don't you come on the air with us and talk about it? So she's going to be here bottom of the hour.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then David Cay Johnston, and and this is a treat. At 11:35-ish, 11:40, something like that, a guy who runs a coffee company, it's called Coachella Valley Coffee, he will join us not just to talk about coffee, although I would talk about coffee I love coffee. I've already had like 11 espressos, usually by the time you see me. But more to the point, he invests, and I know this is going to be a lib woke thing I'm about to say, but he invests in a lot of Latin American coffee growers companies, and he's a small guy. He's not like some big, coffee magnate. These coffee growers in Latin America, and these are businesses run by women. Oh. And he finds them to be immensely dependable, remarkably good when it comes to producing quality coffee. And he's extended loans to them and I think grants to them, honestly. And he's been able to watch this community of coffee growers turn into something really special. And the coffee's amazing. So I'm kind of not a coffee snob per se, but I do know coffee pretty well, and I consume a lot of it, and I have 3 different burr grinders, and I have, a whole, right? So the coffee that comes out of this guy's place is unreal. And so I was intrigued, and the more I learned, I thought, wow, and he has a kind of social conscience about it. Mm-hmm. So to have both is really special. So Cliff from Coachella Valley Coffee is going to be here in the second hour. It'll be after Kim's News, bottom of the second hour.
I also married a coffee snob, and I don't care for the taste of coffee. I'm more of a tea drinker myself. But he will buy the beans that have not yet been roasted, and then he will roast them in our garage to a certain crack level. It's very fresh, very... I know.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
That is very impressive. Yeah. I'm far too lazy to do that. But that is the way to really get it. You should maybe get a question or two in when Cliff joins us from Coachella Valley Coffee.
When he decided he wanted to mill his own flour, I said no. No. You bake your own bread and you roast your own coffee, but we're not milling our own flour.
That's impressive, though. Wow. And your husband is a tech guy, right?
Yeah, he is. He's a tech guy. But he likes he likes to learn the processes and protocols and standards of things.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
I have to say, your husband...
Have all the junk at your house that, the little machines, like no more clutter on my counter. There's not going to be any more machines.
I feel like your husband is probably worthy of the rod of equity and mercy.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
No, you know what I mean? He is. No, I have to say.
Him to get it.
No, it didn't. It didn't. I mean, he's not.
Couple weeks.
It did, and even so, I still think you're borderline. I mean. But there was such a clamor to give it to you. It was like, you could, at some point.
Obligated, yeah.
It was a palace revolt that I was facing if I didn't give it to you. And you might be deserving of it. Not saying you're not. But your husband feels cleanly in receivable territory. He should be receiving it.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Anyway, your husband is the man, says Floyd.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that? I want a peanut grinder, says SF Tesla, that fits in your pocket.
Oh.
Wow. Well, it's a great little hobby, the coffee world. And by now, it's weird. This is a generation that grows up with coffee places and coffee houses and coffee roasters in everyone's garage who wants it, and also on every street corner. And, when I was growing up, there was diner coffee, and that was it. I mean, imagine. There was just no quality of... There might have been a subculture, an underground subculture of coffee, but it was it was either strong coffee or weak coffee, and that was it.
Yeah.
There was no sense of the aromatic adventure that might be coffee. I feel as though the wine world has always had that. The coffee world hasn't. You always talk about the complexity of wine. You talk about tannins. You talk about finish. You talk about fruit forward, all of these various things. There is the Tenuta wine being shown off. The Why Are You Yelling Red, which is the fan favorite.
Why are you yelling?
That's the favorite of Kim's neighbor.
Like that.
Yeah,
I
and then
like it as
the
well. Yeah.
and the white, which is great for the summer.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Which one of you is Mark Thompson white? Anyway, that's a Tenuta vineyard. But my point in mentioning wine is that there was always a lot of attention paid to the complexity and construction of wine. Growing up as a kid, and I think for most of our audience, there was none of that. There really wasn't. It was just coffee, and you got it out of a pot that had been sitting there, and the coffee is cooking on that heater, on that thing that keeps it hot. It's really destroying the coffee and destroying the taste.
Yeah.
Now you have just a world of coffee, and magazines devoted to coffee and blogs devoted to it. And I do feel as though San Francisco, this is interesting from Ron Brown, saying San Francisco beet coffee houses in the early 60s existed. Yeah, it is true that I feel like so many things in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s, there was and I'll use the expression deliberately in this case, there was a percolating world of this sort of coffee, right, of the kind of coffee that we're talking about, where you create it yourself. But again, as Brian says, most coffee was at the coffee shop. It was 10 cents. Yeah. And it was also worth about 10 cents. It was kind of just generally crappy coffee. But
my grandparents used to drink decaf Senka.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My mom... we were sanctified, man. We were sanctified in my house. Yeah. If it was cheap, my mom had it.
That was good. My husband and I were once at a fancy French restaurant in town, and he had coffee after his meal, and he sent it back. We don't often send things back. What are you sending back the coffee? He goes, it's really stale. How is coffee stale? Apparently it can be too old. Yeah. Like a couple hours old in the pot? No, it's too stale.
Well, that's definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Tom says Italians call American coffee dirty water. My folks drank U-Ban, says Julie. Yeah, U-Ban was a thing. By the way, I mentioned my mom and dad had their 68th wedding anniversary yesterday.
Oh, that's
so happy good. My dad had a scrape with a hospitalization, as you know, and I do want to go back and see them again, but a shout out to mom and dad. Yeah, very, very cool. So, and my mom does one thing so amazingly well in the morning, and that is she makes the strongest, dark as night coffee, and I love it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I mentioned the situation with Donald Trump. We'll put it aside, and we'll get to that with David Cay Johnston. I do want to... Somebody just pushed me this piece from the Washington Post on a push in Texas. Wow, Texas is really just... Everybody's moving there, right? Because, oh, man, I don't have all the problems, all the taxes and all the crap and all you libs in California. Between the guns and these bills that they're introducing into the legislature that are related to religion, and by the way, this is not Texas is not alone in this. This is happening in a lot of red states where you're getting religion back into the classroom and back into the legislatures. As you know, I don't have a problem with religion. My problem is I don't think it should have anything to do with public policy. And I don't think it should have anything to do with the curricula and the teaching strategies that are instituted in our schools. Texas lawmakers are scheduled to vote Tuesday, that's today, on whether to require the 10 Commandments be posted in every classroom in the state. part of a newly energized national effort to insert religion into public life. That's the piece in the Washington Post. Supporters believe the Supreme Court's ruling last summer in favor of a high school football coach who prayed with players essentially removed any guardrails between religion and government. The bill, which is scheduled today for the House floor, is one of about a half a dozen religious bills approved this session by the Texas Senate, including one that would allow uncertified chaplains to replace trained professional counselors in K through 12 schools.
No.
The Texas's biennial legislative session is short. Biennial is a ding word. Chaotic. It's a short, chaotic, and packed session, they say. It was not certain whether the Ten Commandments bill is going to get a vote today. If it doesn't by midnight, it's dead for the session. But groups that watch church-state issues say efforts nationwide to fund and empower religion, and more specifically a particular type of Christianity, are more plentiful and aggressive than they've been in years. Americans United for Separation of Church and State are watching 1,600 bills around the country in states like Louisiana, Missouri, and Texas. Earlier this year, Idaho and Kentucky signed into law measures that could allow teachers and public school employees to pray in front of and with students while on duty. What a colossal, you can get rid of the Washington Post picture. What a colossal waste of time and taxpayer money, and what a misguided effort on the part of these, I would consider them jihadists, to get this stuff in front of our kids.
That's a problem.
Again, and this is coming from me. I have no issue with religion. I think religion can be a great, it can be a great cohering kind of, if that's a word, organizing principle of your life. That's fine. And I think it can help through so many difficult things. And Lord knows, to use the expression, you've got a lot of challenges in life, regardless of who you are. But the idea somehow that you could weave religion so tightly into the legislative process and into the educational process, it's despicable. I think it's awful.
If people want that, they should send their children to religious schools, private schools, and pay for that. Otherwise, keep the Bible out of the school. And there are things about the Ten Commandments that are great. Thou shalt not kill. Who could argue with that?
I don't need the Ten Commandments to know thou shalt not kill. Here are the Ten Commandments. It's been a while that, again, they want them in every classroom in Texas. And it's not just Texas. This controversy's been rolling around for a while. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I don't know. Again, you tell me when you get to one that applies.
I'm there right now with no. Yeah.
Okay. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. All right. This is, again, this is of a time, right? When they were trying to build a religion, build a faith, and build a faith-based way of thinking. That's why these relate to that. I hadn't planned to do this long segment on this. It was just pushed to me, and it got me kind of annoyed. Again, this stuff shouldn't be, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. These are things that are just not applicable. And they shouldn't, as you may feel in your life, in your kid's life, it is applicable. Okay, that's your kid going to, as Kim says, a privately funded parochial institution. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. I've gone through just 5. That's half of the 10. And I don't see anything that, you need to have a commandment to get. Then you get to 6, as Kim was saying, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery. Again, I'm not about, whatever. I'm not the adultery police. Thou shalt not steal. Again, I don't need the commandments for that. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Again, I don't need and thou shalt not covet. Honestly, the expiration date on the commandments may have already passed. I would suggest it has. But more to the point, You may feel it's symbolic if you're religious. I get it. It's okay. You may feel the Bible is symbolic and the stories are symbolic. I think that's a perfectly legitimate way to understand these things. And the teaching of these things, I don't even have an issue with. But I do have an issue with it being a prominent part of a child's education. I really feel as though this separation is important, church and state. And it's going the other way, as you're well aware. You saw all the money that's going into Charlie Kirk's fund. I didn't put this in our little, but if you Google it, you can find it.
Google it.
Who's Charlie Kirk?
Charlie Kirk is he's a religious, well, he's not a religious, he's a conservative activist, but he's from that Turning Point USA, but he's turned his pot of gold toward funding religious education and religious nationalism, Christian nationalism, okay? And it's a lot of money. It's not a little money. Let me see if I can find it. He's done very, very well with it. He was just he's a talking head, and here it is. Charlie Kirk's Turning Point pivots to Christian nationalism. There it is. The organization founded to promote the free market sure is spending a lot of time promoting attacks on the separation of church and state. I don't want to get into Charlie Kirk right now, but I will tell you that it's a lot of money and it's going that way. And so if you're worried about the theologies informing life in America, I think it's increasingly a legitimate worry. I guess that's where I am.
What's scary to me is, at one point here in California, we had a father in Sacramento suing because of the Pledge of Allegiance and the words "under God." Didn't want that in the school. I thought a legitimate case. I never thought about it. Said the Pledge of Allegiance a million times, but there should be, and we have in this country, a separation. And so you have to keep religion out of government, even though God is on our money. God is in the courtroom. Do you swear to tell the truth? So help me God. It's everywhere. God is everywhere, right? But it seems like now, when you're trying to stick the 10 Commandments in every classroom, or you're trying to, weasel more religion into public schools, and lawsuits will come, but then you have courts that are stuffed with all these holy rollers. And so now, instead of really looking at the Constitution and what we are supposed to do in this country, I'm afraid that'll all be rubber stamped, and that'll be allowed.
I think that's a really great point, particularly the chess that you just described associated with the courts. Increasingly the courts supposed to be objective and, honestly, this is part of church and state, and the separation is distinct from religiosity. As those courts have now become informed by religiosity, you end up with court decisions that will likely favor the religious aspects of integrating God into the classroom specifically, as opposed to some sort of a general sense. So, you may say, hey, what's the big deal? So you put the 10 Commandments in the and there's a part of me that feels that way, like whatever, but it's what is followed up by that concerns me. And it's also just a waste. And those are taxpayer dollars supposed to be going to other things. I would also suggest, hey, Texas, this just in, you've got other problems.
No.
Other problems. And I might address those instead of spending the time associated in the legislature on getting the 10 Commandments in all the classrooms associated with public education.
Well, this may be something really unpopular, but I don't want religion crammed down my kid's throat. I don't want my kid brainwashed. I don't, if I wanted to teach my children religion, I would send them to church and Sunday school.
Well, you would say that.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Yeah, you would say that, being of the devil.
Right.
That's the other thing. Are you the religion that believes in Satan? Are you the religion that believes in all of us together? What do we, when we say religion, 10 Commandments, what is that? So, all right, now, it's odd. I didn't plan this, but the first story in Law and Disorder is related to religion. Let's do it. We like to keep track of what's happening in the courts, what's happening on the streets. This is Law and Disorder.
People, pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
This out of the Attorney General's office in Illinois. It just broke this morning from AP. It was just released this morning. Word that 451 Catholic clergy sexually abused nearly 2,000 children in the state over a nearly 70-year period. That's more than 4 times the 103 individuals that the church named when the state began its review in 2018. So the church identified 108, or 103, excuse me. But the Attorney General investigated and found 451 Catholic church clergy that sexually abused 2,000 children. Attorney General Kwame Raoul said at a news conference that investigators found that Catholic clergy abused 1,997 children in Illinois between 1950 and 2019. It is my hope that this report will shine light both on those who violated their positions of power and trust to abuse innocent children, and on the men in church leadership who covered up that abuse, Raoul said. He also credited the victims for making this review possible. These perpetrators may never be held accountable in a court of law, but by naming them here, he went on, the intention is to provide a public accounting and a measure of healing to survivors who have long suffered in silence. That's out of the Attorney General's office in Illinois just this morning. Meantime, on the other end of town in Washington, D.C., Jim Jordan's doing that. He's doing a series of hearings designed to show how the government has weaponized various aspects of the Justice Department, the FBI. And he brings these whistleblowers in, right? They're, quote, whistleblowers, but he claims to have many more whistleblowers than he actually has. He claimed for dozens, and yet apparently he hasn't been able to identify any of them, and none of them, you understand, whistleblower is not just a term. Whistleblower is a status you have. And by getting that status, you now, as a whistleblower, get certain protections, certain compensation, etc. And none of these people fall into that category. Anyway, as part of his crusade over government and the government weaponization, again, against conservative values and against just those who the government has a political axe to grind with, Jim Jordan has brought these whistleblowers, who weren't actually whistleblowers, as I say, and who'd given, quote, behind-the-scenes testimony that was literally unbelievable. I mean, it was just, it seemed crazy. Well, the reason I mentioned it in Law and Disorder is that these witnesses who have come forward are actually those who've had now security clearances revoked by the FBI. Now, you may say, well, of course, because the FBI is angry that they're testifying in front of Congress. No, that's not the reason. The reason they're having their FBI and security clearance revoked is that 2 of them were involved in, actually all 3 of them, involved in January 6th activities and involved with the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6th. So as you go through their testimony and go through their identities, you see that their misconduct actually produced the very complaints about the FBI that these people have. For example, one of them is complaining that, well, they came at my house with a SWAT team, and they took this and they took that. They're complaining about the FBI enforcing the law and doing an investigation when it comes to January 6th activities. I mean, January 6th was a kind of a big deal. One was found to have had expressed sympathy for persons or organizations that advocate, threaten, or use force or violence toward the U.S., promoting conspiracy theories about the January 6th violence and misleading a colleague about a January 6th suspect. One was apparently punished after refusing to participate in the arrest of a January 6th suspect. One presented this as a quote, a number of security concerns related to his personal conduct and handling of protected information and use of information technology. So these are all reports in Politico. They've uncovered a bunch of this, but the very things that they're complaining about with the FBI are essentially the FBI biting back on members of their agency, either agents or other members of the agency who were involved in, and I'll use this term just generally now, not in a legal way, seditious activity of one sort or another. Believe me, I got a problem with the FBI. If you look back at the history of the FBI, it's riddled with issues. I mean, they surveilled Martin Luther King, for starters, and they were involved truly in political recriminations of all sorts. There's no question about that. But it would seem now, and I'm not saying, again, we should dry clean contemporary FBI history, but it would seem now as though a lot of these Jim Jordan-related whistleblowers, they're just full of it. They're people who were involved in J6 or trying to cover up J6, and as a result, the FBI handled them harshly. Recriminatory is a ding word. Yes, you're right. I wanted to get to the Bezos marriage. Can I do that a little bit later? Right now, I need to close the book on Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
I do want to say, though, all those romantics out there, don't worry, I will get to Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos are getting married, and it's exciting. And I've got a couple of tips for those crazy kids. They've been together 5 years. And the tips aren't just from me. I found a piece in Forbes that I think they should know about. But I'm not going to get into that now. We'll do that after we speak to our guest. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would. Throw us a thumbs up.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Don't do it for me. Do it for yourself and for Kim. Kim's news, and then we bring our guest to talk Alzheimer's and the latest Alzheimer's medications. Good with you, Kim? Are you good with that?
Love it.
All right. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in lovely Livermore.
Yeah.
That's right. Love you, Tenuta. Thank you very much. California is planning to conserve Colorado River water over the next 3 years. More information about this story today. It's kind of a big deal. There's a picture of that Colorado River. So pretty. Governor Gavin Newsom agreeing to an historic partnership with Nevada and Arizona to help protect the water supply. He says Western states are on the front lines of climate change, and he says everyone has to work together to address this crisis and the weather extremes between drought and flood. The river supports 40 million people, and again, this is a 3-year deal, and there's going to be some big conservation measures coming so that we can keep water in this river, and we can keep our reservoirs at least somewhat full.
Well, that's exactly right, and it's a voluntary thing now, and it's part of a huge problem in the West. This is a drought that didn't end this past year, and it's a drought pattern that's persisted for decades. So, and this was by no means clear they were going to reach this deal, and California was kind of in the driver's seat. And got the ultimatum that if you don't make this deal on water in the West, California we're talking about, if you don't come to the table and make some sacrifices, then the feds are going to get involved and we're just going to legislate it. So it was, I think, born of an ultimatum and also a necessity.
I was reading a story about Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and the story was about how we will never again see them at full capacity in our lifetime.
I totally
And
believe that. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's really one of the reasons why you look at the water levels there, and something has to give. So President Biden says the latest debt ceiling talks with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy were productive. In a statement, the president noted that yesterday's meeting at the White House was about the need to prevent default and avoid a catastrophe for our economy. While there are areas of disagreement, he said leaders and staff will continue to discuss the path forward on what he called a bipartisan deal. So looks like he'll play ball.
All right. Well, let's see.
Florida Governor DeSantis may be dropping more hints that he's getting ready to launch a presidential bid. Fox 13 reports the Republican governor has changed his Twitter handle from @RonDeSantisFL to simply @RonDeSantis. Ooh, it's a hint. His wife, Casey.
He's not just about FL anymore. Now he's about everybody.
His wife has also abandoned the FL in her Twitter handle.
No.
What does
Got
it
the
mean?
whole family involved.
That's right.
Well, I will just mention one thing that Ron DeSantis is doing and saying that I think is an odd choice he's made. He told an audience, this is in Tallahassee, at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Orlando. This just happened yesterday. He told them that he, if becoming president, will have a choice, and anybody who becomes president will have a choice over who will be the next Supreme Court appointees, okay? He said that over the next 2 presidential terms, whoever is leading the nation could very well be responsible for picking successors, people like Justice Samuel Alito and Justice Clarence Thomas. And then he said this is Ron DeSantis, quote, "You can't really do better than those 2. They are the gold standard for jurisprudence." Okay.
Despite all the ethical questions, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's
I prefer the Walmart parking lot.
They're the gold standard of something, but they're not the gold standard of jurisprudence. So it was an odd choice. And last thing, and I'll let you, and I know we have a guest waiting, but the one thing I would say about the Clarence Thomas situation and the situation with the Supreme Court and Ron DeSantis' remarks is, I get it. It goes over well in that room of the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, but the bigger room of the nation views what's happening at the Supreme Court level as a real problem. So I wouldn't wave the Supreme Court flag hoping to make political hay from it. I don't think you will. It was an odd choice. I think he's going to have to tack this route back to something a little more centrist because he's out of step with the Supreme Court talk.
But maybe his base or Trump's base, which is
clearly his base,
could be his base. Maybe they look at what happened with the Supreme Court and what Trump has done or did with judges as being the biggest success of all. And
it probably is the biggest success of all.
He wants to climb on board those coattails and ride them to the White House. The IRS. A report says a second IRS whistleblower is raising concerns after his dismissal about how the investigation into President Biden's son Hunter is being handled. The Justice Department is reportedly weighing potential charges related to tax filings from Hunter Biden. No charges filed yet. The New York Post says a new whistleblower is a special agent in the IRS's financial crimes group.
By the way, I have no doubt that Hunter Biden, I have no doubt, did some stuff. Great. Prosecute him. Imprison him. I don't care. This whole idea that it only matters if his father was involved in some way, involved in, that's the only connection that matters. Go ahead. Sorry.
Carry on. A Russian court extending American journalist Evan Gershkovich's pretrial detention for 3 months. Russian state agency RIA, Ria Novosti, cited the court, saying it granted the investigators' request to extend the Wall Street Journal reporter's detention until at least August 30th. The U.S. State Department has designated Gerskovich as wrongfully detained. He appeared in court in April to ask his pretrial detention to be under house arrest instead of jail, and that was denied. So the Gerskovich case ongoing. There was a kind of a backlash over Ford's decision to not create AM radios and put them into its new vehicles. Well, Ford now will keep the AM radio in its vehicles. The CEO, Jim Farley, making the announcement on social media this week, more than a month after the car maker decided it would not include the AM radio in new vehicles starting in 2024. Farley said Ford reversed the decision after speaking with policy leaders about the importance of AM radio as part of the emergency alert system. So no, we need that.
Wow. It was just, my bad.
My bad. I'm sorry.
No, AM is back in. Yeah.
Well, keep that my bad, I'm sorry,
I stand
handy,
corrected.
because we're going to need it for this one. Lastly, Warner Brothers Discovery launch day for its new streaming service, Max, is off to a poor start. Yeah.
No.
Bad. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, have they apologized for it yet, though, or not?
Subscribers took to social media to see if anyone else was having problems logging in. Everybody's having problems.
Oh, there you go.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Issues
Now I get it.
Seem to be on the website as well as the mobile and the TV apps. Not the best launch day experience. A spokesperson telling Variety the issues are bound to happen on a rollout this big. The new service is a combination of HBO Max and Discovery Plus. You'd think if they already have those other services, this one would be a cakewalk. This rollout.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it would be hard. You're right.
Yeah, we got a problem. We can't do it. This report sponsored
by the way, just the last thing. Why you would, I think I've made this point before, but let me just reemphasize it because it just seems so extraordinary to me. You understand you have the biggest media empires associated with building brand. There is nothing harder than building brand, right? And you have this shimmering, magnificent brand, HBO, right? Everybody associates it with good stuff.
Yeah.
It's won more Emmys, I believe, than any other cable network, which is what it started as. Now they're all streaming. I mean, it is the Tiffany network of Tiffany networks, HBO. So what do they decide to do? Change the brand from HBO to Max. It makes no sense at all. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, it may not matter because they have all these, but, why you would dump a brand like HBO, it makes no sense.
My bad. I'm sorry.
This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in
Come on,
Livermore.
Tenuta.
They are child-friendly. They are pet-friendly. They are cyclist-friendly. And
well, they keep the wine away from the kids, though, don't they? I mean, that's not when you say child-friendly.
Kids can run around. Kids can run around.
Yeah, kids can run around while mom and dad get hammered.
There are
some
wineries. There's some wineries in the Napa Valley, or even some in Sonoma
where they don't
Valley.
allow kids. Yeah,
they're not family-friendly. Like if you walk in with a kid or a dog, they're like, "No, I'm sorry, bye." So that's not the case at Tenuta. You can go have a picnic lunch, do some wine tasting. Kids can run around and play.
Picnic, no summer camp.
It is at Tenuta. It is a picnic or summer camp. Yeah,
Indeed.
That's the point.
And most importantly, Tenuta, of course, is the home of the Mark Thompson "Why Are You Yelling" red blend, which is exquisite.
Why are you yelling?
You better believe it. Yeah.
The Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio?
Oh, that's good. They put it up on screen so Kim could remember it. Yeah.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Right.
You know what? I don't need the riffraff over there.
Okay.
Plus, they've got a dedicated tap room.
I'm more Raff than Riff, but yeah.
You can bring your beer drinker wine tasting with you. They got something for everybody. They support local breweries. And
it's fantastic.
I think Tenuta is fantastic. We love them, and they are
beer
listeners.
Lover, it doesn't matter. Go to Tenuta. They can hang with you, and you're going to have a great time.
That's not fake. That's real.
It is real.
And
Enjoy.
I should mention the discount because you can get 10% off your purchases at Tenuta Vineyards by just calling the number. Here it is. Yes, 925-699-4576. You call and you say, smash it with your iron rod, and you
Smashed
get the
it
10%
with your
off.
iron rod.
Gotta
Yeah.
say it. You can't just
say
call
it and
that.
do it.
Smashed
I'm
it with
calling
your
for the
iron
Mark
rod.
Thompson 10% off. No, you've got to
Yeah.
smash it with your iron rod.
Feels great, baby.
Yeah, do it, kid. Do it.
I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, love that, love that, love that, Kim. I love her.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, we're back, and you are smashing the like button, I hope. We've got David Cay Johnston coming up. We'll talk about Donald Trump and his legal problems, which may now have reached a tipping point. And we'll ask David about that specifically, because the Trump attorney, one of those former attorneys, is weighing in a pretty big way and a pretty dramatic way on all of that. That is Trump. We also talk coffee, as I mentioned to you in the second hour as well. But I was contacted by someone who is a listener and viewer of the show about this protest related to Alzheimer's medications. And, Alzheimer's medications came up in the conversation yesterday with the doctor who we had on, who was great, by the way. You should go back and listen. We've broken it out as a separate video. And I wanted to essentially hear more about this medication that is no longer or never has been covered either by any insurance or certain kinds of insurance. So welcome this viewer, listener on now. Make her feel at home, Kim, please. Cindy Clark, everybody.
Hey!
Hi, Cindy. Hello. Now, you're part of a protest, Cindy, that will take place in San Francisco, right?
Yes, tomorrow at the federal building at 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
But last year, CMS Medicare decided it would not cover any FDA-approved treatments, including the ones coming in the pipeline that target beta amyloid, something you don't want in your brain.
Right. Those are the things associated with Alzheimer's, right?
Yes. Beginning of this year, the FDA accelerated approval for a brand new drug, Leqembi, which is different than last year's. And the early trial results were showing that it does have a meaningful change for people with early Alzheimer's. July is when we'll get the final report on the trial results, and it's expected the FDA will approve it. The Veterans Administration has already said that they will cover this drug. But what Medicare has said is they aren't going to cover any of these drugs. And of course, private insurance follows what Medicare does. People in their 40s and 50s are coming up with early onset Alzheimer's. So it's not just Medicare, but it's private insurance. No other disease is being treated like this. If there's a brand new cancer drug that the FDA approves, Medicare covers. This is why we're doing the protest.
Is it because of the cost of the, what is the reason that they give for not, it's no longer experimental if the FDA has granted approval?
We don't know. The statement that they issued last year was not specific. Nice bureaucratic, not specific. And we don't even know what the cost of this drug will be. Other drugs are expensive too, in other diseases. So we don't think it's cost.
Well, it doesn't make any sense if it's not cost and it's been approved, so we know.
Yes.
You can, reasonable minds can disagree about the efficacy of it, but it just doesn't make any sense. Now, you may say, and I think you're right to say it, hey, a lot of things that come out of the government don't make sense, and this might be one of them.
Yeah. We don't understand why, but this is why we protesting since, bottom line, God forbid, one of you has an illness, shouldn't you and your doctor discuss the treatments, decide what the best option is, instead of Medicare just saying, no, you can't use any of the drugs. Everything in the clinical trial pipeline is attacking early Alzheimer's with this particular, with the beta amyloid. So
Do you tell me about the protest? Do you have any information on the protest for tomorrow, and then what other protests might be planned or demonstrations?
So at the federal building on 7th and Mission, they're doing a peaceful. We always do peaceful protests. Normally, the Alzheimer's Association does not do protests, but we are in this one.
So I'm sorry, you said the Alzheimer's Association. You're in and out a little bit, but the Alzheimer's Association. Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
The Alzheimer's Association. We never protest. We are protesting this one at the federal building, 7th and Mission, from 11:30 to 12:30. As many people that can show up, and we're hoping people will realize this is important. It's not
tomorrow?
just a suit.
It's tomorrow.
Is that tomorrow, Cindy? Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow.
11:30 to 12:30.
Okay.
11:30 to 12:30. Cindy, thank you for this information. And if you want to meet Cindy, what a great opportunity tomorrow. You know where she's going to be there.
Can I add one other thing?
Yes, please.
Really fast. So in San Francisco, November.
She's cut out. November 14th. November 14th, you said?
4th.
November 4th.
That's when we hope we can celebrate approval of new drugs. The Alzheimer's Walk, it gives money to research. For decades, money has been raised for research, and finally we are seeing progress. We just need to be able to use the drugs that are FDA approved.
That's so true. Well, we'll be in touch, and I'd love to. We'll get the word out. Love to have you on again if and when the any other demonstrations or other events are planned. We'd love to have you on. It's obviously an illness that as you say, has touched all of us, and now is touching a younger and younger population. So I think as we deal with environmental pollution and all the rest, Alzheimer's, the connection seems irrefutable to me, and good luck with tomorrow's protest, 11:30 to 12:30 there at the federal building. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks,
Cindy, everybody. Yeah, right on. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So sympathetic to that entire cause. Thank you to Cindy for writing in. I know that when it comes to medications and expenses, the Bezoses don't really have to worry, like the rest of us. There is news. Tony, maybe you can pull up the pictures of the cute couple, 5 years together, Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos. There they are, the two of them enjoying life. They are engaged, everybody, and I am delighted. They're in the south of France, where most engaged couples should be. Right. They're in Cannes. And they are staying where, let's be honest, if you were a jillionaire, you might stay, and that's on your $500 million yacht, everyone. Yes.
There you go. Here's a picture of them on the yacht.
Oh, that is so nice. They do seem very much into each other. The front of the yacht does have a mermaid resembling Lauren Sanchez. It's right there. It's like a living, it's not living, of course, but I'm saying it's an enduring reminder of Lauren. The 59-year-old billionaire, there's the yacht. And the broadcast journalist, Lauren. Nice. Yeah, it's got a pool.
That's a big pool, too.
Yeah, most $500 million yachts do have big pools.
They don't skimp on the pool, no.
Exactly. They started dating in 2018. There is that mermaid.
Yeah.
It's the likeness of Lauren. So they've kept a low profile initially, but then once the divorce from Mackenzie Scott was official and announced and finalized, they have come forward. I've got some pictures of them making out. You see them there? There are any number of pictures there, Tony, that you can find of them traveling the world and public displays of affection. And go ahead.
Do you think he's a big dummy? I mean, he got divorced from his first wife. $35 billion divorce. And now he's got whatever. I feel like I'll call her the plastic wife, but she's very, shall we say, cosmetically surgery enhanced. Here's a woman who's, and I know they've been dating for a while, and
I'm holding my comments until Kim is done. Go ahead. Yes.
Do you feel like maybe it would be nice to just have a girlfriend instead of get married again and pay another $35 billion to her? I don't know, just a thought. Or maybe this is wealth distribution.
Well, let me first say something about Lauren Sanchez. I used to work with her. I went to her first wedding. I was a good friend of Lauren Sanchez, and I always loved Lauren Sanchez. She was terrific. She was smart. I understand the way she looks is kind of like sexuality forward, and the way she sort of acts might kind of ooze a little sexuality or a lot of sexuality. That doesn't mean she's not a cool person. She is. I really like her. So I haven't talked to her in years. I haven't talked to her since she's connected with the Bezos man. But I don't have an issue with her. And I will say something else. And I know a lot of people in the chat have already made fun of her, and I get it. She has that look, etc. But, you women, I'm sorry, but you're so cruel to each other.
Okay,
I don't understand.
Right,
oh, she's all plastic. She's had a lot of enhancements. So what? What? She wanted them and got them. Why is that bad? It's not. There's. Yeah.
I guess the way I look at it, or the way it comes off, and she met, like you say, her. She's probably a lovely person, but when you have those big lips that take over your face and the cheekbones, and you start looking like you've done way too much cosmetic surgery, it feels like you're fake, like you're a fake person, like that.
It feels as though you want to somehow. When you say fake, I don't know, you want to improve your look. People sometimes do it by losing weight or getting those dermabrasion things, or,
right.
You know what I mean? There's a bunch of different stuff that you can do. And would you say, well, that's fake? I mean, God gave you your face and you shouldn't ever do dermabrasion. Or, you know what I mean? It's God made you. I'm sorry. I would discourage maybe my girlfriend or wife from doing it, but it might depend if she really wanted it, and it's somehow that, so what? I find that just as we can say it's superficial, to bust somebody on the superficiality of it is also superficial. You're only evaluating them based on their look. So
because
again,
I have no other information. Yes.
Right. I don't think you can really gather any other information. Now, I do have this, though, Kim, because this is the other part of what you were saying, which is after the Bezoses are together now, the new Bezoses, they are to be married, Lauren and Jeff, there are going to be some financial concerns. And I went to Forbes, and they have this: marriage and finances, 3 crucial steps to take before tying the knot. Here are 3 tips, they say, on how to approach each money conversation with a future partner. This columnist says, based on my own marriage and the experience of coaching many women toward financial independence, pre-marriage and post-divorce, here are the concerns. Initiate money conversations early, even if they're uncomfortable. By the way, probably would be uncomfortable in this case, right? You don't want, if you're Lauren, for him to feel as though you're marrying him just for the money, right? But they probably passed that. Here is the piece from Forbes that I'm quoting from. You want to bring this up to let your partner know you're considering a long-term future. Make it less awkward by prefacing your questions with statements that don't feel judgmental. Here are some questions you can use to open up the conversation with a more positive spin. Maybe the Bezoses will do some version of this. Are you saving up for anything special? What is important to you? What is your favorite thing to spend money on? What don't you like to spend money on? Divorce would be my guess. What did your family teach you about money? Do you invest? Who do you like investing in? What do you like investing in? Debt can be really hard to deal with. What do you think about debt? These are all things. Know your own numbers and financial independent goals. Budget together, even if you don't share expenses. I'm guessing they don't share expenses. Don't ignore gender and racial wealth gaps. Acknowledge that while women have made great strides in their finances, there's still a big gap when it comes to both pay and total wealth. It occurs to me that some of these things don't apply really to Lauren and Jeff. But nonetheless, it's good for the rest of us to keep in mind. Marriage and finances. I wish them the best. Frankly, Kim, I think you're not going to be invited to the wedding. I'll just be honest with you. No, you are.
No.
You're a bit too disparaging in your comments to be invited.
I really am. Yeah.
Tony, you're still in the hunt. Is the good news. If you've, I wouldn't clear my calendar. I don't think it's.
Thanks, Tony.
But I would just say that it's possible. So, smash the like button for Jeff and Lauren.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Those crazy Bezos kids are enjoying life. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We'll supersize Kim bottom of the hour so that we can get to the Pulitzer Prize winner, 4-time best-selling author. He's the Trumpologist, as many have called him. And there is news of Trump today, and it's fairly significant, and potentially, I would suggest. The co-founder of DCReport.org put it together for David Cay Johnston, our regular Tuesday visitor. So proud and honored to have him in the mix. Hey, David.
Hello there. Listen, I want to say one thing about your previous segment.
Yes, sir.
The Danish modern furniture that's behind me and the table I'm sitting at. When my wife and I got together more than 40 years ago, I bought this. And she took one look at it and said, "How much?" And I said, "Doesn't matter." And she said, "How much?" And said, what it was. And she broke out her checkbook and paid half of it. And we have always, through thick and thin, and there have been periods that were really thin, the day we had $1.78 left in our bank account. That's the way it's been. We're a unit, and if you're unable to be a unit, then maybe you shouldn't be married, or you should recognize that what you have, as many wealthy people do, is a commercial marriage.
Well, I know you didn't mean that as a joke, but it just sounds funny. But I in the context of our leaping off point, really, for that Forbes piece on those considerations to which you've referred, which is they're associated with a real understanding of home finances and the relationship finances. The jumping off point was the announced marriage of Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos, and the likely conversations that won't really, I suspect, have to take on the kind of significance, that you had with your wife or with others. Most of us will probably have to deal with. They seem pretty well set, I guess might be a way to put it. But
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Hey, David Cay Johnston, I wanted you to see something, and it was Tony. Do you have it? The from Ty Cobb, the former Trump attorney. Can you run that? Here's a little piece of what Ty Cobb said about Trump and his legal situation. You have it, Tony, or no? Here it is.
I think this obstruction case is a tight case. And yes, I do think he'll go to jail. Trump keeps lying about what the law is. Apparently, 16 different government officials reminded him of the process. He totally ignored that and believes that the mere fact he took him declassifies. That's not the law. Everybody will be watching if the feds come after him, and the feds are coming, and I think they're coming fast.
So now I want to ask you to comment on that and the growing legal problems that Trump seems to be having.
Well, Ty Cobb, unlike his crude ancestor, is a very sophisticated bulldog lawyer who was representing Donald at one time. And I believe he's exactly correct about what's happening here. Donald has expressed this magical thinking that if I just think a document is declassified, that declassifies it. That's just not how it works. And Trump's problem is that he lied and denied. I have a few national security documents in my house here. Many people do. The government isn't going to care about that. What they're going to care about is if you have the document improperly and you lie and deny about it. Now, Obama, Biden, and Pence, and apparently every president going back to Kennedy has done things where they kept national security documents or they forgot them and left them in their home. which tells us that, a lot of local libraries are more diligent about keeping track of books than we are of these sensitive documents. But the issue isn't mere possession. The issue is lying and denying. And Trump got his lawyers to lie and deny. And what's really going to kill Donald on this matter, and I mean that metaphorically, and what Ty Cobb was talking about, is that a federal court of appeals has upheld breaking the attorney-client privilege between Donald and his lawyer, Evan Corcoran. There are other lawyers too, but the one that matters here is Evan Corcoran, under what's called the crime fraud exception. You've got confidentiality with your lawyer unless you're plotting a crime. And in that case, no, that goes away. And Evan Corcoran turned over 50 pages of highly detailed notes that document that Donald Trump knew and was told repeatedly that he cannot keep these documents, that he lied about them. In addition, Trump's valet is on video moving boxes around of these national security documents after Trump had his lawyers certify that he didn't have any such documents. I would say the government has got a lot of leverage over his valet, and his valet is going to be offered a real simple choice. You can spend the next 20 years to the rest of your life in federal prison, or you can cooperate. And that's Mark, that's Donald's real problem, is that the people around him who've operated under Trumpian omerta are deciding that they're going to talk rather than go to jail for him. And they may go to jail anyway, but not for nearly as long.
Does David, you're an accessory the way, we know it in a higher profile way with, because it's been on television and in movies so much. If you help with a murder or you cover a murder or you drive away from it, you're charged with murder as well. Is being an accessory to these various things associated with obstruction, that's the legal sword that hangs over them?
Yes, exactly. And in the case of the valet, there may be an important issue about criminal intent, mens rea. That's not going to be a problem with Trump anymore. Once you can show that you were told what the law is, you then violated the law, you then lied and denied about violating the law, that's very clear evidence to a jury of criminal intent. And I think Ty Cobb is exactly right. Trump will be convicted. And now whether he'll go to jail is going to be up to a judge. It is entirely conceivable a judge would give him home confinement. Hopefully, if that happens at Trump Tower rather than Mar-a-Lago. There's plenty of precedent for that. There's a guy right now in New York City who has not been allowed to leave his apartment. He can't even walk down the hall to the trash bin because of a dispute over Chevron oil in Peru. And the judge finding that he has not been forthcoming about supplying some documents.
You're talking about the attorney involved in that case who is now under house arrest.
Case. He's not accused of any crime.
Right. That's a hit job. Just not to digress, but that's a hit job, David, on that guy.
This is an effort to, I think, improperly leverage this guy on behalf of Chevron, which bought another oil company that was doing all sorts of corrupt things. But my fundamental point is that Trump doesn't have any defenses here, and Donald is always shooting himself in the foot. I mean, he just lost $5 million judgment to E. Jean Carroll in her second libel case. The first one hasn't gone to trial. She is now seeking to amend that one because, once a jury finds that you wronged someone, people, even if they don't like it, stop repeating it. And what did Trump do as soon as the jury decision came out? He went after E. Jean Carroll again, called her a liar, said all sorts of horrible things about her.
Called her a wacko on that CNN town hall.
A wacko, and she's going to collect damages again, and probably much bigger punitive damages, because the point of punitive damages is to punish you for bad behavior so you don't do it again. And he just goes right out and does it. And that's because Donald really believes, and I've known this for almost all the 35 years I've known Donald, Donald really believes he's special, he's different, that whatever he says, that makes it real. He creates his own reality, and that he's not subject to the law. He may have to maneuver and manipulate and whatnot, but But the law is for you and me. It's not for him. And he's not unique about this among some very wealthy people.
I mean, sadly, David, there's some truth to the fact that he's never really had to pay the piper on many things. Now, you could say, for example, Trump University, you did have to pay the piper. You had to, cut a check for $25 million, and detail in your book the way he's been held to account a little bit along the way. But the real day of reckoning, David, the one where you go ding dong, the witch is dead. It ain't happened yet.
Well, and if you look at all of the penalties that he's paid, he's actually come out ahead. He hired 400, to use his term, illegal immigrants to work on Trump Tower and didn't pay them. He made them partial payments only when they threatened to throw or hang his overseer over the side of the building. And then when they got their cash payments, they went to a table and there was a mob guy sitting there who took a slice of their pay, a fat slice of their cash pay, which was essentially minimum wage. In today's money, it was $11 an hour. And when Donald ultimately had to pay up, he paid up far less than if he paid properly what he should have done in the first place. When he got fined by the casino commission in Atlantic City, again and again, the fines were far less than the cost of the benefit to him of the wrongdoing.
It's being suggested here in the chat, and it's not unreasonable to suggest it. Does the notion of him getting some judgment, ultimately being confined to, a house arrest or whatever, or even if you, in some fantastical way, the guy goes off to prison, any GOP president would pardon him. Isn't that likely the case? I mean, it would.
That's an interesting question. I think that would be a very difficult move. If you had a GOP president who won by a large margin and was aligned with Trump, yes. But, would Ron DeSantis do this? Not very likely.
No, I doubt.
And remember, if Trump, who at this stage is likely to get the Republican nomination, virtually certain of it at this point, if he were to be tried, convicted, and incarcerated, he can still serve as president of the United States. The only way he could be removed would be if he's impeached by the House and then convicted by the Senate. And I suspect if he were behind bars or even under house arrest, that enough senators would get together that we get the necessary 2/3 majority to remove him from office, because it's just untenable. On the other hand, given how crazy a lot of American politics are right now, what we're seeing go on with these massive efforts to deny the vote, to make it easier to possess weapons of war. There's a big effort right now underway in Texas to allow a state official who's appointed by the governor to decide whether votes will be counted or not. And it's apparently aimed entirely at the blue dots, the bits of Texas. Who knows? I mean, we're really in a period of very crazy, hard to understand politics. I told my students before our last class that if when I was in junior high school or high school, if some teacher had said the day will come when the Republicans and a Republican president will side with the Kremlin against American intelligence agencies, I would have gone to the principal's office and said, you need to get a psychiatric evaluation to this teacher. Look what's happened. Look what's happened.
It's under the guise of wanting to de-escalate or wanting not to be part of any kind of military incursion or battle, right, in Europe.
I'm sorry?
Isn't it? That's done under the when you say siding with Russia, I just want to be clear on it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, Trump said, I trust Putin. And
right.
Virtually the next sentence said, I don't trust any of the American intelligence agencies.
Yeah.
And they have a number of Republicans in Congress, like Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, who don't want us involved in Ukraine and have taken up the side of Vladimir Putin. I tweeted earlier today a video that's at the New York Post, of all places, showing, it's pretty gruesome. It shows how the Wagner group, the mercenaries, when they capture Ukrainian soldiers, they don't follow the rules of war and take them as prisoners, as the Ukrainians are doing with Russian soldiers. They execute them. And this video is the execution of a Russian soldier by the Wagner Group. And they do it by putting you next to a stone abutment and smashing your head in with a sledgehammer. Wow. I mean, it's really monstrous people.
I want to pivot, but stay with a little bit of this Trump stuff only because of another revelation. I think the first was, I thought, the Ty Cobb statement that sort of suggested, hey, they've got him when it comes to the covering up of the documents in the face of...
They've got him there, Mark.
Yeah. So now let's go to this. Special counsel Jack Smith's team issued a subpoena for information about former President Donald Trump's foreign deals during the time he took office. All right. This is when he was president. The subpoena specifically sought details on the Trump Organization's real estate licensing and development deals in China, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Kuwait, Oman, and France. These date all the way back to 2017.
Yeah. Donald ran in 2015 and 16 saying that he would not do any foreign deals. Well, that was a lie, like many things Donald says. He did do foreign deals, and I detail some of them, particularly in India, where astonishing roadblocks were cleared for Donald's projects once he became president. And the usual bureaucratic difficulties that afflict business in India just magically disappeared. I was told by a very high-level general, a former diplomat, and a Canadian a national security person in separate conversations that Donald was doing all sorts of business activities and there was money flowing in very suspicious ways. And all of them said this came from intercepts. We intercept not only email and telephone conversations that go overseas, but FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Center, also tracks financial transactions. I once had the head of FinCEN tell me that I asked him, well, somebody made a $19.95 purchase in a Malaysian hardware store that was crucial to some terrorist investigation in the U.S. And he cut me off and said, give me enough resources and we'll find it. Because things are digital, you know, you can scoop up these records, and the National Security Agency has computers beyond anything that we mere mortals deal with. But I couldn't prove that Donald was doing any of these things. I could only prove where there was a public record, like the India deals. But it would not surprise me one bit to find out that people were putting money in Donald's pocket, or if not cash, making arrangements. And if I were his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, I would be very worried now. Jared Kushner, who, remember, had to repeatedly submit his SF-86 form. You have to resubmit that once. You're probably not going to get a security clearance. And he and his wife couldn't even match up their ownership claims.
Well, they didn't get security clearance by the book. They had to get Donald Trump to Bigfoot it.
Over the objections of seasoned experts in this field, he was given security clearances. Then he began, Malcolm Nance has reported, ordering up massive amounts of data from the Middle East. Shortly after this, you'll recall that the MBS, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, had all these wealthy Saudis arrested. One of them was murdered and held in the prison of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Saudi Arabia. And then after Trump is out of office, Jared gets a $2 billion infusion of money to manage from MBS, Saudi state funds. And the New York Times comes up with these documents showing that all the financial advisors to the Saudi family said, don't do business with this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no track record. He's high risk. His fees are absolutely astronomically out of sight. And they went ahead and did the deal anyway. Well, that was not an act of charity. There's something else going on here. And in all likelihood, it's tied up with the murder of the American journalist for the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi.
And it is a reminder to all of us that his last official trip at taxpayer expense was to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And then he gets out, and I mean, that is to say, out of, quote, government service, and he opens that fund you're talking about, and it's all with Saudi money, $2 billion, essentially all with Saudi money.
I suspect there's a lot there, but the most important thing on Trump is going to be the issue of the national security documents and the lying, denying. We're never going to know for sure what Trump told Putin, what secrets of ours he gave away, what American agents or assets he compromised intentionally or through his own hubris, largely because we have other national security interests to protect.
I see.
But on the lying and denying about the documents, I mean, Sandy Berger spent time in prison because he took one page, folded up, put it in his pocket, and walked out of a SCIF, a secure facility for looking at such documents.
I mean, all that stuff from that time seems so quaint compared to what we're talking about now. You know?
Yep.
David, loved our time together. Thank you so much for making time for us every Tuesday, and you're a fan favorite, so we love exploiting you.
Take care.
Yeah, good to talk to you, David Cay Johnston. Thanks, David. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
David Cay Johnston. Wow. Yeah, also Saudi money at the Trump Hotel in D.C. That's right, says shadow producer Calvin Wong. Hubris is a ding word, says Tom. That's true. Hubris was used by David and is a ding word. I'm just kind of catching up with a couple of comments along the way here. But yeah, David's a winner, no question about it. Hasn't received the rod of equity and mercy, though. It just occurs to me. I never didn't really offer it to him. But
receive the rod of equity and mercy.
But maybe it'll happen. You know, it has to happen organically. You know. I have coming up bottom of the hour. We talked to the coffee dude from Coachella Valley Coffee, and we talked to him about investing in Latin America with largely female-run coffee businesses. Before that, though, I do have a caper story, and it is related to law and disorder. Could you fire that back up for me, Tony? Is that possible? I'm throwing you a curve, Tony.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts,
no problem.
thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
This dude is not a good dude. He's a rich guy, a businessman who was in Fort Lauderdale in official custody. Authorities saying that they foiled his attempt to escape and return to France, where he had previously fled in an attempt to avoid child pornography charges. So he's not a good guy. A tip from outside the jail sparked a 2-month investigation of Jean Manchek, 78. He had enlisted quite a few people in his escape plan, and whenever you have all those people involved in your escape plan, you run the risk of somebody chirping, and that's what happened to here. Essentially, the plan comes down to this, said the sheriff. These folks that are on the outside are going to wait until Manchik has a doctor's visit, and then they're going to take out our corrections staff, again, this is the sheriff speaking, while Manchik is out at the medical facility.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
The plan called for Manchek's employees to pepper spray prison guards and take Manchek to his private plane in nearby Fort Pierce, Florida, so that he could then fly to France. He was arrested in 2014 on 49 child pornography charges.
Oh.
Yeah. As I say, he is not a good guy. But his attempt to get out of prison was foiled. Yeah. I saw, speaking of prison, I don't have this story. I might have to just Google it in real time.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is kind
There's never been anything like
this.
It
really hasn't.
It's going to happen now.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find this for you. An inmate, I found it. Thank you very much, everyone. Please, you know what? Let's not. A simple smash of the like button will make me.
With your iron rod.
An inmate tunnels through the wall, not to escape. What? Where's the what?
What?
He tunnels through the wall because he wants to kill another prisoner, everyone. Yes.
We're all motivated for different reasons.
Yes. The heart wants what it wants, everyone. It really does. Yes. An inmate at Rice Street Jail in Atlanta, Georgia, tunneled through a wall and attacked another inmate with a knife. Kavian Thomas is suspected of the stabbing. Everything's being played pretty hush-hush here. But what happened was, over many days, this inmate literally tunnels through a brick wall and crawls through and stabbed this other prisoner in his upper body. He survived the attack.
Does anyone think that he was in the wrong place? No. Prison might not have been the right place for him? No.
If he'd only used those powers of digging for goodness and niceness instead of look at that hole.
Wow.
We're showing it on YouTube now. I mean, that's impressive.
He must have been pretty skinny. How do you fit through there?
Well, again, it's desire.
Suck it in. Suck it in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Suck it in. And again, that's a championship run that this prisoner had to killing another prisoner. And that, my friends, is Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
It's kind of an encore presentation of Law and Disorder. We did a version in the first hour. We fired up a special version in the second hour with a real-time Google search.
Google it.
I mean, it was pretty impressive, Tony. You got to admit
Thanks,
that.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I did a good job getting that picture, right?
I was just about to get to that.
Well, Tony, what angered you?
What angered you, Tony? I didn't lead with that. Was that it?
Well, Tony, what angered you?
I should have said, by the way, Tony.
Well, Tony, what angered you?
Really, with fine work.
Thanks, Tony.
So, yes, smash the like button for Tony.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Tony, you've received the rod of equity and mercy, have you not?
I believe so, like a week or so ago, right?
Yeah, okay, good. It's good for life, so you don't need it to be, you just want to be clear.
I have also received it, but mine has an asterisk, I guess.
Just saying. You know, let's see where we are when the 11,780 subscribers come.
I just want to find 11,780.
Yeah, we are at 11,250, I think, right now.
Oh, we're close. Share the show, you guys. We're going to push it.
If you can share it on Facebook, we'd very much appreciate it, particularly Facebook, because you think that's where a lot of our old Station X people are. But you can share it anywhere. Maybe it's a Law and Disorder that you share. You can share a video, whatever. Ask for them to subscribe. They never have to watch. They can just subscribe. We're just trying to get 11,000. So we just need 11,700.
I just want to find 11,000.
Right. I just want to find them. Yeah. We're people. We're humble. We come from regular stock.
I come from regular stock.
So all we want is our 11,780. So I hope we get it. We got a lot of psychic energy wrapped up in it. So Kim's News and then the Coffee King as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. A warning on this one. Mark, you said supersize news. I have indeed supersized it.
I love it. Supersize it, kid.
I have about 10 stories in here. I kind of went a little cray-cray, so.
Love it.
Girl, you just woo.
You go,
That's
baby.
Right.
Go.
That's right. We'll start with the House expecting to vote on a bill to address the fentanyl crisis this week. It's called the HALT Fentanyl Act, and it would reclassify fentanyl-related substances as Schedule 1 drugs and shore up resources for law enforcement. The White House indicated this week it does support the bill. So, the HALT Fentanyl Act. Investigators say this guy, they seized a flag with a Nazi symbol on it after a U-Haul truck crashed outside the White House last night. This guy is 19 years old of Chesterfield, Missouri, quickly arrested after this incident, which may have been intentional. His name is Kandula, is his name. And Mr. Kandula allegedly made threatening statements about the White House. So, yeah, he's apparently under arrest, not,
They probably call him Ken for short, not
Sal Kandula.
Oh,
is his name.
I see.
Sal.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
So my eye on my keyboard went crazy again. What can I say? In the years since the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, families of the victims have been pushing to raise the age needed to buy an assault weapon. As a matter of fact, Mark, I think you've talked about it on the show. But that has fallen on deaf ears at the state capitol, where gun control bills were repeatedly, quote, shot down during this legislative session. Lawmakers instead focusing on funding mental health treatment, not on restricting guns. Another Starbucks store unanimously voting to unionize. Here they are. Yay, look at them all in San Jose there. This time in San Jose, the downtown San Jose Starbucks on the Alameda is the 23rd Starbucks in California to unionize, saying they are fighting the company's hour cuts, inadequate staffing, and disregard for safety. Starbucks has been accused of union busting. The former CEO was grilled on Capitol Hill in March over its labor practices. More than 300 stores across the country have voted to unionize. None, though, have been able to negotiate a bargaining contract with Starbucks. The Bay Area will soon be home to the world's largest semiconductor research and development site. It is happening at Applied Materials. They plan to spend $4 billion building the site in Sunnyvale, and Vice President Kamala Harris revealed the news during her visit there yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Apple is launching an agreement, a multi-billion-dollar agreement to develop 5G components in the United States. The tech giant joining forces with US-based manufacturer Broadcom. The parts will be designed and built in various American hubs. Apple CEO Tim Cook said in a press release his company will continue to invest in the American economy. Here's this weird-looking little robot dog. Los Angeles City Council voting on whether to accept the donation of a controversial robot dog to be used by the Los Angeles Police Department. The vote has already been delayed twice since early March. LAPD representatives say the device will only be used in SWAT or hazardous material situations or search and rescue operations. So should the city of Los Angeles accept the gift of this robot dog, the LAPD.
Why is it controversial? I don't quite understand it. I mean, why I don't understand the controversy. I mean,
I think that when you have police departments given or able to buy at a very reduced price so-called weapons of war, so things that would normally be used by the military, there's a backlash that you don't want.
I see.
Military things used against American civilians. So, in this case, maybe you have a robot dog that's capable of doing things that you might not want it to be roaming Los Angeles.
I see. Okay, I get it.
I mean, that's
the basic bust on all robots. I mean, that's essentially the same. Yeah, I get it. Right. If you turn robots loose, you have less control over the thing than you would over a human being who's being turned loose.
Well, and I think the argument is really any weapons of war. So it would be tanks or, whatever you would use in war. You don't want police departments to have that same capability. And that's the argument that I've heard.
I see. Okay.
So On to, speaking of, though, Los Angeles, we'll stay there. Los Angeles Dodgers organization changing its mind and re-inviting the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to the team's Pride Night in June. The Dodgers issuing a statement Monday apologizing to the group of queer and trans nuns. The sisters have accepted a new invitation to attend the game and to be honored on the field now with the team's Community Service Award. Yeah, the LGBT.
I mean, they're yeah. Go ahead, finish. They did the right thing ultimately on this.
The LGBTQ community and many politicians had spoken against the Dodgers' decision to disinvite the group, saying they had given in to right-wing fundamentalists. But now again, the sisters re-invited.
I mean, it's always one thing or another. You're giving in to something, but the truth is, this is a community. The LGBTQ plus community. They've added a couple of letters even to that, where there are people. It's comprised of people who legitimately are discriminated against and worse in the society. So here's a fun thing. These guys have been around for a while, and it's a sort of parody thing. And it's a shame that these organizations, like the Dodgers or like the Warriors or like the Giants, whatever, need to be pulled into these controversies. But as long as they're going to exist in the culture, and sports does exist in the culture, and it exists in the controversies that are the culture. I mean, witness, Colin Kaepernick, etc. These special ways to honor parts of society, members of society, outstanding participants in what is the culture. These things should be fine. And I don't know. The whole controversy, as usual, the controversy created its own problems, and then those problems all of a sudden elevated the entire thing to a level, and it became a national incident.
I think it was really nice of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to accept the new invitation. They could have said, you know what, screw you. But instead, they nicely said, you know what, we will come. Thank you very much.
They could have done what you sort of did with the
rod of equity and
the
mercy.
rod of come from regular stock.
Yeah, you could have just done that.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I took it. Don't say I didn't take it.
No, you didn't say. But before it was bestowed upon you, you said, "I don't know. Maybe I won't accept it." I remember you saying that. I actually gave you credit for that. It was a very kind of 3D chess move. Anyway, go ahead.
Speaking of sports, football fans counting down to another Super Bowl in California. Last year, it was in Inglewood at the home of the Los Angeles Rams. In 2026, it'll be at the San Francisco Bay Area Stadium where the 49ers play, Levi's Stadium. The NFL making it official at a meeting yesterday. Santa Clara last hosted the Super Bowl in 2016. It will also be flooded with soccer fans turning out for the FIFA World Cup just 4 months later. And lastly, a new study out of UCLA finds cannabis smoke isn't as bad for people's lung health as tobacco smoke. The study says COPD, that's one of the major risks of smoking tobacco, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, I think is what that means. It is not connected with smoking marijuana. Researchers compared groups of people who currently used to or have never smoked marijuana. Most of the people were studied for more than 4 years. The study concluded any amount of marijuana smoke is not known to cause or progress the development of COPD.
Huh.
Where are my weed smokers at? I was paused. I was going to let you do it.
Where are my weed smokers at?
I will tell you that I'm trying to organize Cliff, who's going to join us in a moment. So sorry, I didn't mean to be distracted.
Always some kind of excuse.
I've got a huge weed button.
Where are my weed smokers
Yeah, I don't know
at?
why I didn't. I was just over it.
This show is crowdfunded, and that means we rely on you. You can find the Patreon and the PayPal link at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com, and so much more on the website. So check it out. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Why are you yelling?
That's not fake. That's real.
It's fantastic.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Glad you could be with us. If you're just joining us, well, you can go back and catch any part of the show anytime. That's one of the beauties of this entire setup. We took our radio show, we moved it to YouTube, and it's been challenging in many ways. It's also been rewarding in many ways. Thank you, all of you who've come over and supported us. We really are a crowd-funded show, so it's been important to not only get support in terms of subscriptions and all the rest, but many of you have made donations and continue to make donations on an ongoing basis, on a monthly basis, and that honestly lets us stay on the air. It's a weird thing, and it's the part of the situation that I like the least, having to ask the audience to support you, but we really appreciate so many of you who have stepped up. So thank you very much again. Yeah. And smash the like button. That costs you nothing.
Smash it with your iron rod.
And share it on Facebook, the show, and ask people to subscribe. They don't have to ever watch. It just helps us with the subscriptions. Now, I wanted to introduce you to someone who is associated with the greatest coffee in the land. But that in itself wouldn't be enough to get him on the show. It's the way he operates his business and those businesses that feed the system by which he comes up with this greatest coffee in the land. Welcome from Coachella Valley Roasters. How about it? For the king of Coachella Valley Coffee, Cliff Young, everybody. What's up, Cliff?
Hold on a second. He can't. There we go.
Yeah. You got it? Hi, Cliff.
I'm so close.
You're on a cell phone? Is that what you said? He's on a satellite phone from Latin America, everyone. No? It says
Sorry,
here...
He connected for a second there, but yeah, then you lost him. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we will wait for a moment, but I will say whoever is producing this thing...
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Cliff
Young...
Can you hear us now, Cliff?
I can hear you.
At Coachella Valley Roasters, Coachella Valley Coffee in... Let me guess, Coachella Valley?
There you go, brother.
All right, thank you very much. We have the website up now, handcrafted in the Coachella Valley. Where is the Coachella Valley, please, Cliff?
Well, it's Palm Springs to Thermal.
Okay. So you get all those, you get the festivals there? Do you get those?
We have a music festival or two, yes. As you well know, I heard you were out trouncing through them.
Well, I like I went to the country,
Yeah.
The country stagecoach, they call it.
That's the one we go to.
Yeah. So I have been telling everybody about you and your Coachella Valley Coffee in relation to, of course, great coffee. You have all these different sorts of coffees and all the rest.
Yes.
But I've sort of been bragging about the way in which you source those who are your coffee growers, where you source the beans. I wonder if you could discuss that a bit, because I was mentioning that you tend to favor female proprietors, women who are involved in a lot of these businesses throughout Latin America generally.
Yes. And I'm in my 28th year of doing this, and it's funny that the last couple of years buying from women-owned farms is kind of the cool thing to do, but I've been doing it for decades because these are my friends. So about 40% of my coffees right now are from female-owned farms, because we knew decades ago that if I want to take care of a family, you got to get the money to the female first, because she'll always take care of the family first. Sometime you give us guys money, we get lost on the way home. We come home with a new crock.
Yeah, there is
and
that.
So that's part of our business model. This company I started 3 years ago, and we've just blown up out here, because not only do I buy from women-owned farms, I have certain demands on the farmers we buy from, and most of these I've been buying from for decades. We overpay the farmers because we want them to stay in business. But we also ask the farmers to do certain things for their employees, give them free education for the kids year-round, free medical. And when you're in harvest, 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and then you take home dinner, because the hardest part in this entire coffee industry is that person picking those cherries from the shrubs. I know because I've tried and, rolled down the mountain a few times. And I've had many farmers refuse to do that, and we move on. We found the ones that will do that, so we make sure they're taken care of. They make sure their people are taken care of. It's a win-win.
So coffee comes from berries? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, coffee comes from a berry. It looks like a small little cherry. It looks like a Bing cherry, and usually there's 2 seeds in that. And so every coffee bean is usually touched by a human, every cherry, 5 or 6 times before you see it. I'm going to touch it at least another time before it goes out in the mail to you. So it's one of the most, it takes more human energy than any other crop we have. And, years ago, last time I was in El Salvador, I was talking with a large East Coast roaster, and I said, coffee really is the modern day cotton. There's people in this industry that absolutely abuse the people that are picking the coffee. There's many of them that are working for $1, $2 a day, and we refuse to be a part of that. That's why I let anybody know that's buying from me, I'm not a discount coffee roaster, because if I give you a discount on the price, I can't do what I'm supposed to do, which is take care of the people growing this coffee, the people picking this coffee, to take care of my team here. And even though we're blessed to be extremely busy, everybody thinks I must be rolling in cash. I don't. I still have my 15-year-old car. I like it. It works. It has an air conditioner. That's all I need.
You're from regular stock.
I come from regular stock.
Just like Clarence Thomas. All right. So Cliff, when you're starting this business 28 years ago, did you start kind of like Kim, my colleague, is someone whose husband roasts his own beans in their garage. Is that kind of how you started?
I started in the coffee business. I opened a little coffee cart at Kaiser in Fontana in 1995. So
in Southern California, right?
Yeah, I started with an espresso machine I got at a yard sale and on a folding table and Costco muffins. And I thought, well, if I could do $200 a day, I could carve out a living. Well, the first year that one did about $250,000. So I was able to actually build a coffee kiosk, and I ended up with about 4 Kaisers throughout Southern California. And then I built my freestanding coffee shop in Redlands in 1999. And then I started hanging out with coffee roasters in Seattle. I got to hang out with Alfred Pete, and I just fell in love with that process of the coffee because I just wanted more control of my product. And ever since then, yeah, I was hooked.
So when you, just quickly, when you roast the coffee, what are you doing to the coffee?
Well, I get
to
coffee
the bean.
Green, and it looks like a split pea. And it's got about 12% moisture in it. And a small percentage of that moisture is actually natural sugars. So what I'm trying to do is turn those sugars, I'm trying to caramelize them. So roasting, it takes a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. And just to caramelize those sugars perfectly. And when I learned to roast by the old guys, it was nose and ears, smelling that coffee and listening. You can listen and you can tell what the temperature is. Even though we all have computers now watching stuff for us, a computer doesn't smell. And so that's all I'm doing. I'm a cook, but I kind of know where I want that coffee to be, depending if it's a Guatemala, we have a honey process Nicaragua right now that is just unbelievable, and that likes a little lighter roast. So it's just a cook trying to figure out what temperature works best for what bean.
So Cliff, Tony just showed a picture a moment ago of the what you're talking about, the green bean. Yeah. Okay, if you were to take that green, there it is on screen now. If you were to take that bean and run that bean through the normal process of grinding, and then you were to, draw the hot water through it and drink that coffee, what would that taste like?
Grass.
Okay.
Yeah, it tastes real grassy or like a wet hay straw.
I see.
Not very tasty.
If you're really a purist, you want to grind your bean right before you draw the water, before you make your coffee.
Yeah, because Mother Nature kind of gave us a natural container to hold all the flavors in that coffee. So if you can grind it right before you use it, because once you grind it, within a couple of minutes, half of the flavors and oils have evaporated. So that's why you can always tell the difference between something that's freshly ground or something that came in a bag ground.
Is the last thing, Cliff, the coffee house is Coachella Valley Coffee. I say coffee house. He's a purveyor of beans that go everywhere, as we've just detailed. And there are all these different, it's different flavors, different roasting. When you see a darker bean, does that mean by definition that the coffee is going to be stronger that comes out of it?
No, the darker you roast, you're cooking more of the caffeine out of it. So the darker roasts have less caffeine, and the strength is really in the grind size. If you want a little stronger, grind it a little bit finer.
I see.
The darker will be a little more intense on your taste buds because you're going to taste more of that char from the dark roast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. So my last question for you, as we just finish up with Cliff Young, the roastmaster at Coachella Valley Coffee, is this trend that occurred? I was saying at the beginning of the show, we were talking about the fact that you were going to come on. When I was a kid, there was just diner coffee and that was it. And it was that way for a long time. You pay, and somebody else said, I used to pay 10 cents for a coffee. And my mom used to make U-Ban and Sanka and all this other stuff. And then there was this rise in, Starbucks, Pete's, and then these individual roasters. And in San Francisco, where a lot of our listeners are in the Bay Area, there was a subculture of the coffee houses, right? That now you find everywhere. Again, people go to coffee houses for any number of reasons. They'll have major meetings, creative meetings at coffee houses. So my question to you, though, is the landscape has changed, though, that dramatically, in the decades. Has that been good for you, or is all the competition not as good? Where does that cultural trend affect you?
Competition just kind of, it's good for me because people figure out who's doing a good job. Competition doesn't scare me. And I don't say that I don't have an ego, but I know what I'm doing and I know how to do it well. When I started drinking coffee as I think 19-year-old, I would buy those cans of International Delight because that's how fancy I was. But people are figuring out a little more about the coffee. I think the public, the Gen Zs, want to help more. So they're going, I can help this farmer. I can help this women-owned farm by buying this coffee. So we're very transparent of where our money goes. But that's why we're in business. I travel. I've been to every farm that we deal with, except for the Ethiopians. We have a new Ethiopia. Then I rely on my coffee brokers, my buyers, and I actually buy from the largest female coffee broker in the country, who I love and adore, and I trust them to send me some great coffee. So this industry it's big, but there's a small little circle. I'm blessed that I can call Martin Dietrich a close friend, or Mike from Klatch Roasting, and there's this little group of people that I go, if I have a new coffee in, I go, hey, I got this new El Salvador. What would you do with it? We're just teaching other people to do great coffee. There's no egos floating around.
That's terrific stuff. Well, listen, I adore your coffee. The Coachella Valley Coffee is the best on earth, and I really, as I say, that wouldn't be enough to get you on the show, because I just feel as though the other part of your story is as compelling. How you lift up so many business people through Latin America and across the world and Africa as well, and it's women who you lift up, who really take care of business. So handcrafted in the Coachella Valley. By the way, someone asked, and maybe I've been saying it wrong. I say the Coachella. Is it Coachella or is it Coachella?
Just Coachella.
God, I've been saying it wrong all this time. I really
It's that Bay Area tongue of yours. You just want to make everything fancy. Hey, let me tell you, next time you are in the Bay Area, there's a little, over by the Presidio, there's a little coffee house, Henry's House of Coffee. He must be 90, but he used to sell tea to Alfred Pete before Alfred started roasting coffee, but he is the real deal too. And it's people like that I adore and I get to go hang out with. So just another.
Oh, that's really cool. Henry's
House of Coffee. Yep.
Henry's House of Coffee by the Presidio in San Francisco.
Yes, sir.
Cliff at Coachella Valley.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks, Cliff. Appreciate it. Love having you hang out with us. Yeah, right on, buddy. Continued success. Wow.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I think I interchangeably say Coachella and Coachella, but it would be like me to dress it up in some kind of... It's odd because I come from regular stock. But I still find myself dressing stuff up like that. So.
You even turned it Italian at one point and said Coachelli.
Well, I think that was just misspeaking, but which I do.
I misspoke.
Right. I stand corrected on that.
I stand corrected.
I did, though. I mean, deliberately say Coachella and I think I used so. That's really
yeah.
Anyway, where to buy Coachella whole bean? Yeah, he's got a website. I don't even. We should have put the website up there, Tony. What was the?
It'll be the link to today's show. I could put it up in the chat right now.
Okay, that'd be cool if you would.
I'll drop it in the chat, and it'll also be in the description of today's show. It'll be there.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Coffee is good. Right out of one of those Mark Thompson Show mugs. And there it is. Wow, he's really quick. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yeah, that's how you get there. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Order it and pour it into one of those Mark Thompson Show mugs. You have a Why Are You Yelling mug, Kim? Or do you have a, I think you might have a, where my weed smokers are. Oh, why are you picking on Brett? That would be a good one. Do you have that?
No, I don't have any of them. I need to order them, though.
I'll tell you what.
I thought maybe the Rod of Equity and Mercy would come with a mug, but you get nothing.
Well, maybe one of the things you don't realize is that, by barely participating in the show, you're locked out of a lot of these things that come along with the show.
Are you kidding? The show is my life. I love this show.
Sometimes I believe it and sometimes I don't, Kim. But I adore you, and this show adores you, and we embrace you in all of your Kimness every day. Yeah.
I can tell because I can order a Brett mug online, but there's no Kim mug.
Yeah, well, one battle at a time. One battle at a time, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Yes. Kevin Hobbs, big shout out.
Big shout out.
And Kevin Hobbs, who is HOF, Hall of Fame.
Forward. Nice.
I'm not going to cry, Kevin.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
But someday, when I go to see your statue, Kevin Hobbs.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
There on Thompson Terrace, in the Megaverse, you are HOF. I will.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
Did I say Metaverse or not?
You said mega, I thought.
Oh, meta. Well, I didn't. I think
Metaverse.
I think I misspoke if I said that.
I misspoke.
Maybe you misheard. Did that,
I stand corrected.
Let it roll. I'm going to stop correcting it. I just let it fly.
No, I appreciate the correction when appropriate. Although, again, all right.
My words upset so many
Thank you, Kevin. And Kelly, thank you for a $5 today. Mark's guests are having issues with dropping out audio today. What is the story with that, Tony?
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
Would you like to issue a report on that, a producer's report?
User error. We did nothing wrong.
Thanks, Tony.
Now you can see what I'm up against. They do this to me all the time. I don't know.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Spencer for $10. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
When is Spencer, speaking of Spencer Christian coming? The answer is tomorrow. The award-winning broadcaster Spencer Christian, who's gotten more out of life than I have. It's like he's the successful older brother that comes out of the show occasionally to remind me that I'm not as big a deal as I think I am.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
He's got an award-winning podcast. That's what he's got.
He has an award-winning, he got the Edward R. Murrow Award for his podcast. So
got some Emmys laying around,
Yeah. He's quite the dude. No question about it. But Anyway, I'm excited to have him on. That'll be tomorrow. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything. I have some stuff I left on the table today that I will bring onto the table for tomorrow. I'll mention that Wednesdays we check in with John Rothman, so he will be here tomorrow. You'll have Spencer Christian, you'll have John Rothman, and you'll have many things that I left on the table. So, we've learned a lot about each other today, I think. Lauren Sanchez and Jeff Bezos are getting married, and we gave them some tips on their upcoming nuptials. David Cay Johnston came in and weighed in on the legal entanglements of Donald Trump. The Illinois AG striking out at the Catholic Church. Trump and his foreign deals. The FBI, quote, whistleblowers that turn out not to be whistleblowers at all. Nikki's show starts now on the Nikki Maduro channel, so check it on out. And until tomorrow,
Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Shadow on an upcoming show, too. We have to work that out.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Either this week or next he'll be on. Until tomorrow, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.